I would like to call the school board meeting for November 5th, 2019 for the Des Moines Public Schools to order. Please take the roll.
Mr. Barron.
Here.
Ms. Bradley. Ms. Caldwell-Johnson.
Here.
Ms. Delagardelle.
Here.
Ms. Ellsburn.
Here.
Ms. Langford.
Here.
First item of business is approval of the agenda. May I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
Move approval.
Motion by Caldwell-Johnson, second by Anderson. Please vote. Motion passes 7-0. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes from October 15th, 2019. May I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
Move approval. Second.
Motion by Delagardelle, second by Caldwell-Johnson. Please vote. Motion passes 7-0. Next, we have district recognitions, and I will turn it over to Dr. Ahart.
All right, good evening, Board. Our work at Des Moines Public Schools would not be possible without the support of many community partners in both big and small contributions. And very few partners have been as generous over the years as our partnership with Prairie Meadows. This evening, I want to recognize them for their recent Community Betterment Grant that is supporting one of our critical new programs at Des Moines Public Schools. As you know, a few years ago, we established the Skilled Trades Academy here at Central Campus, part of an alliance between education, labor, and business to meet the need for skilled workers by creating learning opportunities for our high school students. This initiative helps to meet the workforce needs in our community while creating pathways for our students wanting to pursue high-skilled, good-paying jobs and careers. Prairie Meadows' $150,000 grant will help our Skilled Trades program grow with new classroom and lab space, creating more opportunities for teaching and learning about areas such as plumbing or HVAC work. I'd like to invite Tasha Brown, our Director of Central Campus, and Julie Stewart, the Community Relations Manager at Prairie Meadows, to please come forward to share a little more about this generous grant and our Skilled Trades effort. And I would also like to welcome Gary Scrutchfield and the other members of our Skilled Trades Alliance advisory to join us up here at the podium. Is Tasha? Come on up, and Julie, and Gary and company.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Tasha Brown. I have the honor and privilege of getting to be the director of Central Campus. I don't have a lot to add, and I know that we're always pressed for time, but I do want to acknowledge and recognize our business partners that I have here behind me, as well as Gretchen Critelli, who was really one of the founders of this initiative. I got to pick the ball up kind of mid-court, and they have graciously received me in this endeavor. But as we know, there is a skilled trades shortage, and with the Governor Reynolds' Future Ready legislation, they're really looking at helping K-12 partners and business and industries make those connections so that we can say, you know, how are we going to fill this gap in our workforce? I think it's also important to make sure that students have a variety of pathways. One of the things I love about Des Moines Public Schools is our mission of preparing students for the next stage of their lives, and we're not defining what we think that should be. And I think that there's a lot of work to do to make sure that students have multiple pathways to achieve their goals and aspirations, and that might not always mean a four-year degree. We want to make sure that our students still have access to those opportunities, but really the purpose of CTE, Career and Technical Education, is to help students see those through, and that would not be possible without these really great people behind us. We're really working hard right now on making sure that parents are informed about the opportunities that are here locally with our business partners for employment, along with their wages and their benefits packages, because a lot of times the kids might have the interest, but maybe parents aren't on board with that. And so we're making sure that we're having a solid parent campaign. And one of the things that we're also working on, and Prairie Meadows is certainly helping us, is with our financial campaign to make sure that this is continuing to be sustainable in tough resource times and allocations. And so they also help with that as well. I think if we had some students here today, we tried to get some kiddos, but with the fall break, it was a kind of a hard sell. But I know that they would tell you that they're really having a fantastic experience here to explore what might be next for them. And this construction project is really going to make sure that we have the space and the equipment to make sure that those students are getting access to the skills and applications so that employers are saying, yep, you guys are doing it right, this is what we need, and they can just go ahead and onboard, hopefully, into a formalized apprenticeship program. So as always, appreciate your service and your support, and again, I want to thank the group behind me, and I'll turn it over to Julie.
Well, thank you. I'm Julie Stewart, Director of Community Relations for Prairie Meadows. And we really, at Prairie Meadows, we believe that investing in skilled trades is the future. And we've provided a $150,000 legacy grant. And this year, we gave out 18 legacy grants totaling $3.5 million, and we just look forward to continue this relationship working with Central Campus. So our grant program, it seems like 2019 has flown by, so we're ready to start our next grant cycle. So that opens January 2nd, so I hope you continue to apply for more funds so we can support the trades.
Grab a photo with everyone, if you all don't mind. Is this good right here? Okay. Yeah, perfect. Okay.
Tall guy. Okay. Short in the front. Okay.
To be in the background. Oh, just staring at them. Yeah. Hi, how are you?
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, that's amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate your time. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have consent items. We allow any person the opportunity to speak to the board for up to 5 minutes following the presentation of an agenda item. If anyone wishes to speak to an agenda item, please go to the information desk to sign up. Remarks must be germane to the agenda, and we ask that you avoid reference to personalities and to character attacks, as those types of comments serve no productive purpose. We appreciate your input. As a reminder to the board and public, the board will not engage in discussion or deliberation with the speaker regarding comments made to agenda items. Discussion and deliberation will remain among board members at the board table, with speakers' comments informing said discussion, deliberation, and determinations as deemed necessary. And does someone have the consent? Ms. Anderson.
All right. I move that the board approve the consent items in accordance with the recommended action for each item on the consent agenda, including bills previously authorized, certified, and approved for payment by the board secretary in the amount of $7,014,216.63, and procurement card transactions in the amount of $672,769.89.
Thank you. May I have a second? We have a motion by Anderson and a second by Barron. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes 7-0. And next on the agenda is a public hearing. The public hearing will come to order. Is there anyone wishing to speak to item E1, public hearing for a gym, kitchen addition, and cafeteria renovation at Jefferson Elementary School? Hearing no one, I will close the public hearing. And Dr. Hayhart, will you please introduce the matter?
Yes, I recommend the board review the proposed plans and specifications prepared by Wells Plus Associates for a gymnasium and kitchen addition and cafeteria renovation at Jefferson Elementary School, hold a public hearing, and approve the plans. And if I may, just to make an editorial note here, with our statewide penny, as you all know, we have great community involvement in developing the plan, and we always have, of course, more needs than dollars to fulfill those needs. We've really prioritized technology infrastructure, safety, and security. So we have secure entrances at all of our buildings, and a close third is ensuring that we have separate spaces at our elementary schools for cafeterias and gymnasiums. The work at our schools is challenging in the best of circumstances, and when a school is limited by only having one large space like that, what ends up happening is lunch and PE drive everything else, because there's just no other way to coordinate the services that we provide for students. So when we have these gymnasium and cafeteria separations, it provides the leadership and the staff at those schools to focus on what's best for students at the right time for those students. And I mentioned that again tonight because this is the last one. Jefferson will be the last project, and we will now have all of our elementaries with separate facilities. You've approved a lot of these. They've turned out really well, and I'm thrilled that we have this happening now at Jefferson. So I'll turn it over to Bill and Mary and our architect from Wells Plus.
Well, thank you all for letting us be here tonight. I am Mary Menard. I'm the principal at Jefferson, and I can attest to all of the things that Dr. Ahart just said. We are very excited that this addition is coming. We are excited for so many reasons that I'm going to tell you a little bit about. But first, I'm going to turn this over to Doug Wells, and he is the architect from Wells & Associates who is running our job.
Thank you, and thank you to the board for the opportunity for us to be here. And the project's a very fun one and a special one to do. I'll start, and we'll walk through the plans, and I'm going to start with the overall site plan that we have up on the screen now. To the bottom of the page is Watrous Avenue, and then to the left is Southwest 26th Street. And our project main focus is the new addition in this location that's shaded blue. And the placement seems to work real well with the existing building and the site. And a couple other details of the site development are we're connecting of the two parking areas so that we get a nice, safe traffic flow coming in like this. And so the lots will be connected. There's about 33 parking spaces in this existing lot. And then there's about 30 in the lot to the east or to the right of the page. So this is going to be an improvement in the traffic flow and the safety, and then the sidewalk gets connected. Additionally would contribute to the safety. Placing the addition in this location works around an existing geothermal field that is there. That is, providing an energy-efficient mechanical system for the whole complex, and then there's a playground in this location, a hard surface, which is getting located to this area on the site. There's an existing play structure which will remain in this location, and then a new baseball field in this location. And then to control water runoff on the site, we're creating a water detention basin all the way over by Southwest 26th. And that will capture the runoff water from the site. After our activity, often parents and visitors will park in this parking area, and we're developing a new entrance for after-hours activity, such as music programs or PE or that sort of thing. Then in this diagram, so this is the floor plan of the project, and I first want to point out that this mechanical space sits above this portion of the building, so it is not out here on the site, and we'll have a couple exterior drawings. This is the line of the existing building, and this is the current combined gymnasium and cafeteria, which is being renovated into just the cafeteria function. And then the new multipurpose room / gymnasium is located here. And then we've created a series of connecting links to that. Currently, the students come down to the cafeteria and circulate in this location. We're opening that up and creating an ability to walk past the kitchen and then into the renovated cafeteria space. This wall is getting opened up, so we have a nice-sized lobby and queuing area for the students and activity. As we would go through this lobby space, the north access comes out to the upper playground area. And then I mentioned with regard to the site, this is our new after-hours entrance and creates a public entrance for any activities that might occur in the cafeteria or the multipurpose room. We have restrooms and support functions, PE office, and then the multipurpose room storage and gym storage. And of course, a new kitchen facility, dietary office and storage, and then a service entrance in this location. Additionally, the site is cleaned up by the creation of sort of a utility corral and screen fencing at this portion of the site. Now moving to the exterior, so this perspective image illustrates we're using a very similar brick, so when the whole package is together, it'll be an ensemble and the different components of the building will tie together, so it'll look like one place. We have, that is the view from the parking lot, and then the upper drawing is the north elevation, and the lower drawing is the elevation from the west. So we'll have a handsome new presence to the public with a couple red accent pieces, and then an entrance canopy and a generous entrance from the parking lot coming into the building.
Okay. All right. All right, then we're going to talk about, of course, some of the advantages. There are many, and especially as Dr. Ahart said, when you can split your cafeteria and your gym, it opens up scheduling like nothing else will. And we were very proud of ourselves a few years ago. We worked really hard with our PTA to work on getting round tables for our cafeteria so that our kids could sit at round tables and have conversations and have a really nice part of their day. And it's been great. Unfortunately, we still lack time for kids to just sit and relax and be able to enjoy themselves the way that we would like them to be able to do that. So this is definitely going to help with that. So that will be an advantage, absolutely, for our kids and for staff too, because then they're not kind of fumbling over each other, also trying to use those spaces. We also are very excited because we have, in the past few years, the wonderful problem is we haven't had enough space to have our families come to things like music concerts and those kinds of things. And so we've moved ourselves to Brody, and they've been wonderful in letting us use their area. But we have really missed being able to have our families come into our building and have our kids be excited about our space. And so having that space now, we'll be able to move all of our programming back into our building. And again, you know, when kids are bringing grandparents and things like that to concerts and things, they want to be able to show them classrooms and things like that. And we haven't been able to do that for a few years. So that will be exciting. The other piece is the community piece. We really haven't been able to, we've had a few things where community members have come in and done some classes and things. But we've really been limited on that. And as we, became a neighborhood school a few years back, the most exciting thing about that was to be able to be a part of that community. And so this edition will also give us opportunity to invite community in and let them see who we are and let them see that we are a part of them and that they are a part of us. So there are lots of things that we are excited about. And I think I'm going to stop because I could probably talk to you for a while. But I'm going to have Bill Good talk to you about the schedules and the costs.
Well, I don't feel like we should stop you, as excited as you are, so that's good.
Yes.
The schedule, again, you probably remember that on October 15th, you had the preliminary plans presented to you. We do have the final plans, and they are online and available for review. And obviously, the same presentation that you received tonight will be online. We're looking at a spring 2020 construction start and with a September 2020 completion. So our project budget is, we're estimating that at $3 million, which has been very similar to our last few projects with this scope. So with that, if there are any questions or comments, we'll certainly answer those.
Stella Gardell?
Yeah, I just have a couple questions about the outdoor space because I don't know if we, in the last few, have spent as much time, discussing the outdoor space. Bill, can you give us any sort of an idea of how does that compare to the outdoor space at other places? Is this kind of catching us up, or is this something unique that for this elementary?
Yeah, actually, it's a little more unique. Many of our school sites are kind of small, so sometimes you have to rearrange to make things work. And so what you saw that is a lot of rearranging of play space. So we're having to moving things a little over here so we can create the addition there. Yeah. So it looks like a bigger scope, but most of our concentration is on the addition.
Yeah. Yeah, I just know like a new baseball field is a great opportunity for a neighborhood, right? Particularly over the summer, spring months, right? When kids like to be outside, that can be a safe place for them to be so they're not playing baseball in the street. I've seen that happen in my neighborhood. So, yeah.
Well, and that was one piece too that was very important to Mary and the Jefferson community. So we listened to them and rearranged some things, and with the help of Doug Wells and his folks, we believe we have a great plan here for Jefferson.
Ms.
I have
Anderson?
one. Is it lighted, the baseball field? Will it be lighted? No.
No, it's just a grass.
For during the, okay.
It's not an elaborate baseball field. No.
Right. I just
It's an
didn't know.
elementary baseball field.
Oh, okay. Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. May I have a motion and a second to approve the public hearing and superintendent's recommendation? Please vote. Motion passes 7-0. Next, we have a public hearing.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you. The public hearing will come to order. Is there anyone wishing to speak to item E2, public hearing for auditorium upgrade at East High School? Hearing no one, I will close the public hearing. Whoops. Superintendent.
Steve.
Will you please introduce the
I
item?
recommend the board review, review the proposed plans and specifications prepared by DLR Group for renovation and upgrades to the auditorium at East High School, hold a public hearing, and approve the plans.
May I have a motion and a second to approve the public hearing and the superintendent's recommendation?
Second.
Okay, motion by Langford, second by Bradley. Any questions or discussion?
I would just add, if you've not taken a good look at those plans, it is going to be one fantastic project.
And long overdue.
Yeah, long awaited, but it is going to be magnificent.
Yep.
I'm really excited about it.
Great. Okay, we have a motion and a second, and please vote. Motion passes 7-0. Next on our agenda is item F1, Comprehensive Annual Financial Report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2019. And I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Ahart.
Thank you. You all are used to hearing from our external auditors, RSM. And one thing that I think is really important to point out, we have a large budget. We're a large organization, about $500 million or so. And we've been accustomed to having a clean audit year over year over year for a number of years now, and that does not come easily, and it takes really the cooperation of the entire district team, but especially the leadership in business and finance, and I'm thrilled to say that once again we have another clean audit. We don't have a formal presentation. Well, I guess we do have a formal presentation.
Short, though.
So, but short, yes. So, Shashank, I don't know if you have any comments you'd like to make before we turn it over. Okay. Thanks. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent, members of the board. My name is Kevin Smith. I'm a partner with RSM, here to present the results from the fiscal year 2019 audit. We met with the audit committee about a week and a half ago to go through this in detail, talked through the comprehensive annual report and all of the deliverables that go along with the audit, and answered all of their questions. So tonight's just a brief summary of those results, but if you've got any questions, certainly feel free to ask as I go through the slides. The first slide here just indicates that we were engaged to perform an audit in accordance with government auditing standards, which is standard for public school districts. The main purpose of the audit is to give an opinion on the financial statements. So the 163-page document that you see in your materials, that's the comprehensive annual financial report. That's the responsibility of management and the district. We give an opinion on those financials and whether they are in accordance with generally accepted auditing or accounting standards. And our opinion that we gave is an unmodified or a clean opinion. So that is the highest level of assurance that you can receive as a result of an external audit. The last couple bullets there just note that there were no significant changes this year with respect to new accounting standards, so you're going to see a lot of consistency with how the report has looked in the past. Another item we're required to communicate to you at the end of the audit is just listing out some of the significant estimates that are included within the financial statements. The more significant ones here are looking at fair value of investments and looking at the pension assumptions that are used by DMTRS and IPERS, in addition to other post-employment benefit assumptions. Those are calculations that are done by actuaries. We do have internal actuaries that look at all of those things to make sure that they are reasonable. So no issues with any of the estimates that are included within the financials. And then just kind of a bullet list here of what you see in the letter to the board, that there were no audit adjustments that we made as a part of the audit process. So the finance department, the business office, and their team are very prepared for us when we come in to do the audit, and we did not have to propose any adjustments as a result of our audit work. There were a few uncorrected misstatements that you see in the letter that were discussed in detail with the audit committee, but again, nothing significant. Overall, no disagreements with management, no difficulties in performing the audit. We have full access and full cooperation from everyone that we work with at the district. And then this slide here talks about compliance reporting. So in addition to looking at the financial statements, we do also test certain federal grant programs each year. And the three programs that were tested this year you see listed here were the special education grants, Title II and Title III. So we tested those three programs, and we give an opinion on compliance with each of those programs as well. And we gave unmodified or clean opinions for each of those as well. So no findings to report. That first bullet there mentions internal control over financial reporting. We don't give an opinion over internal controls as it relates to financial reporting, but we do look at the controls of the district. And if we had any sort of significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal controls, we would report those in writing to you. So you do not see any of those reported in the compliance report. And then this last slide here is a slide we've shown for a number of years, just going back to 2010, when there were certain findings reported within some of the grant programs and internal controls, and just showing for the past several years, there have not been any reported. The benefit to that is that you do keep the cost of the audit down as well. We have to test fewer major programs. You're not indicated to be a high-risk auditee for grant purposes, so having those clean audits helps in more ways than just receiving a nice piece of paper, but it does help keep those costs down. And that's the conclusion of my presentation, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Mr. Barron?
Well, I continue to represent the board on the audit committee, and so a week ago Friday was when we had this report presented, and I think it was a very good conversation by the audit committee. We, I think, continue to be very well served by our audit committee. We had our new internal auditor in that meeting for the first time, and that's a nice segue to note that Kevin noted that there were no disagreements, no challenges in preparing this audit. That's all, though, accepting the fact that we were down significant staff members throughout this process. And so I want to give credit to Nick and all of his colleagues for their work in preparing all of this. They've done a very good job. I think that was noted in the meeting, and I think we continue to be very well served by not just by our staff and our audit committee, but by our auditors as well. And I think it's showing that we're very very good steward of public funds.
Thank you for those comments. Anybody else? Thank you for the presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
May I have a motion and a second to approve item F1?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, motion by Barron, second by Delagardelle. Please vote. Motion passes 7-0. Next on our agenda is item F2, update on social and emotional board limitation. And this is a discussion item, and Dr. Ahart and team
Interesting.
will present.
I didn't know anything.
I think we should have a report coming up, or a presentation rather, coming up on the screen here shortly. And I don't know if I'm qualified to run this very fancy mouse.
I was trained, so I can do it.
Okay. I've not received appropriate training. You'll find in your packet what looks like a monitoring report, and it's titled a report toward progress of compliance to the new policy on social emotional learning that you all passed in June. We had work. We were already undertaking work relative to social emotional learning. We pushed the clutch in a bit after the passage of this policy to recalibrate and ensure that the work was driving specifically toward compliance with the policy. So just a couple of notes on the report that you see. There is an interpretation, but I want to ensure that you know that likely that interpretation will change to some degree as we continue this work. One of the things that I need to ensure to the board is that I can demonstrate with data compliance aligned with my interpretation, and we don't have all of the data pieces identified yet because of this work is really building the K-12, pre-K-12 actually, infrastructure for SEL, and so we don't have all those pieces in place. So that interpretation is an initial interpretation, and it will likely change the next time and the time after to get a little more high and tight toward the measurement tools that we have in place. So with that, I should introduce Jake Troja and Laura Fefchak, who have been leading the task force work for the district on SEL. So
thanks, Tom. Good evening, board. Yeah, Tom did the introduction, so we'll get started. So we were just going to remind of the limitation, which you all just passed not too long ago. So we've been looking at this and look at it as, kind of our work, and we just wanted to spend a few minutes updating on where we currently are and trying to meet the limitation. All right, so Laura's going to update kind of our current actions and where we've been.
Are you going to control?
I can click for you if you
Okay.
like.
All right. Okay, so this slide, well, maybe I should click because you're already doing it Wrong, sorry. Sorry, Nick. Wait,
Tim, can we go back one slide? Thank you.
right there, perfect, thank you. Just as I criticized you, then I didn't do a good job either. So what we're here to do tonight is just update you on what we have done so far in this work. So it really focuses on three things: partnering, a needs assessment, and the planning that we'll be undertaking this fall and into next year. So part of what we've done so far with our partnering is we've established a lead team for the district, and that involves Jake and I, and Kay Augustine from the state, as well as our C3 coordinators with the district. And they're going to be taking a leadership role. We do have a district work team that is established that has around 35 practitioners on it. So counselors, building principals, teachers from the various grade levels across the district. That's a larger group, so we anticipate the smaller work group doing some of the logistical business and then bringing it back to the larger group for feedback and input. We've established a community problem-solving team. This is part of the work that's been done over the past couple of months around the other board goals. And so we were able to have some community involvement last month with both community members, school staff, district staff, and some youth in our community. And that was a really, it was an enlightening opportunity to hear what they had to say about social and emotional learning and what their experiences have been in the Des Moines Public Schools. So it really reminds us of the importance of having all those voices around the table. So that work is ongoing. We also have established partnerships, ongoing partnership with the Iowa Department of Education, as well as CASEL, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, and Panorama Education. Do you want to click that? All right.
you. There's a little bit of a delay.
Oh, okay. Did I do that right?
Yeah, you're fine.
As I mentioned, the Des Moines District has been connected to Iowa Department of Education, as the state has also been working on social emotional learning initiatives, so we will stay connected to them and align our work with what's going on across the state. Oh, I just went backwards, sorry. Part of the partnering that we're doing with CASEL is it's an organization that's had a lot of experience collecting data, making recommendations for social and emotional learning across the U.S. And so we're very excited that one of our next steps is going to be engaging in what CASEL calls a readiness and engagement survey assessment. They're going to be coming to Des Moines Public Schools in January. Jake and I have had initial conversations about what that visit will look like. They have quite an extensive list of data that they would like us to provide for them ahead of time. They'll want to be doing some school visits, visiting with administrators, visiting with community members, district staff. So we'll be putting that into place in January. That's 2 days that they will be on site and basically assessing our district-wide readiness for engaging in this work. At this point, we've probably talked with you lots about different data points we have about student behavior and other kinds of things, but we don't really have a baseline for what it means to measure social emotional learning. And so this collaboration with CASEL is hopefully going to give us that information that we need to get started with a steady plan that's going to meet our goals. So it's really about creating that roadmap. Panorama is the other partnership that we've been involved with this fall, and Panorama seeks to gather data from students, from teachers, from school staff around different parts of social and emotional learning. So this summer, there was a subgroup of the larger task force that got together and decided on some questions that we wanted to have answered when we did our assessment for our students and our staff this fall. So the 3 sections that Panorama focuses on are student skills and competencies, student supports and environment, as well as teacher skills and supports. So in Des Moines, we chose questions centered around self-efficacy, social awareness, and emotional regulation for students. Those were the areas that we were most interested in hearing about first. And then we also wanted to get input from students around their sense of belonging, teacher-student relationships, school climate, and rigorous expectations. So the exciting thing is that on Thursday, we have representatives from Panorama that are going to be starting to help us dig through the data. That survey was done last month, and so we're going to start to see some of the responses and then be able to make a plan. That just tells you a little bit about Panorama. It has been involved with over 900 school districts, 11,500 schools, and many, many students. So they've got lots of good data to help us for our next steps.
So one of the limitations that we want to update on is the needs assessment, which Laura just talked about a little bit with Panorama, which was 9 million students, which is important when we start thinking about normative data, as we can do climate surveys and we could do assessment surveys based on their perception of skills, but the normative piece is what would we compare it to, and what would that tell us about that? So that's why it was really important that we chose a partner that had a robust data set for normative. We went with needs assessment here, and part of the reason we needed the needs assessment that we didn't have was we don't have an asset-based social emotional data. We don't have anything that's asset-based, that's aligned to any type of competency as well. So the important part about that as well is that we have CASEL that's coming to do their readiness assessment. They also is who we've aligned to our assessment is aligned with. So Panorama is aligned to CASEL as well. We don't have any way to measure the students' SEL competencies either, so that's really important as well. We have a lot of behavior referral data, so one way to think about that is we have a lot of data that tells us what kids can't do. We really don't have a lot of data that tells us what kids can do. We really do need to differentiate between climate and skill data. The state has provided us with conditions for learning survey, which is really climate-based survey, what kids think of their environment. And so this assessment will help us do that as well. And then again, we'll be able to kind of triangulate data that we have that's a little bit more lagging in terms of the conditions for learning survey, which is annually, the Iowa Youth Survey, which is biannually, and this will be twice a year for us that we'll be able to get that information. So we should be able to have some more in-time assessment data along with some of those lagging indicators will help us really chart a course for action as we move forward. Panorama is the vendor that we're using, which Laura talked about. It's asset-based and it's not diagnostic, meaning that it's based on students' assets. It's aligned to CASEL, which is a collaborative that has 25 years of experience. It's identified to the individual student, which is one of the limitations that we had before. We weren't able to talk about a specific student in a specific classroom, so teachers weren't able to see that information about their students, and now we can. We can identify it down to each individual student. And again, it's nationally normed, and we can, in the dashboard, we can change to how we're comparing ourselves around the nation to schools that are like our schools demographically so that we can have like comparisons. So far we have had the assessment done. It was started in October and it finalized here recently, like Laura talked about. We have the data available for us Thursday. I assume in the future that we'll probably have a work session with the board with Panorama about how we would set some goals based on that data, as interpreting it is important, and there's a lot of information in there as we started to kind of dig through it recently. So how the assessment works is pre-K2, where the teacher would complete the assessment based on their perception of the student's skills. And then at 3rd through 5th grade, it's all student perceptive based, so they complete a survey. And then at 6-12, it's student perception based as well. So there's basically 3 different brackets of surveys. In addition, we did survey school staff and asked them similar questions around their SEL readiness and their perception around the benefits or the assets within the school. And again, there's the timeline. We just finished on October 18th. We'll have another assessment timeline in March with that data that gets turned around in about 2 weeks is what they've presented to us. Go over kind of what Laura talked about. These are the different areas. And again, they're separated out into social awareness, self-efficacy, and emotional regulation, as those are the skill-based areas that we're focusing on, and the other 4 areas are climate-based topics. And again, like Laura talked about, we had a task force that got together and talked about those and looked at what we were doing already in our before and after school programming, who had been using some of these type survey questions before. And again, we won't change these topics from spring to fall, and no schools are bearing us at school sites. So we'll have right now, we had quite a few students complete the survey. I think our participation was right around 80%. So we're talking pretty close to 26,000 students that were surveyed during that time. So what we'll be focusing on Thursday, and just kind of a connection here with the board, is what will we do with this information from a granular level at the school level. Really we'll be reflecting on core instruction and supports. I think it's important to look at that this right here is really just the top reasons that come from a research-based response from CASEL about what would you do with SEL data and what does that look like. And so this gives us some examples of that, but really most importantly, we'll be looking at how will we use the information to change our core supports in our core instruction for students. What will we know about that? And I'll give you some examples of that is how students feel about their teacher is in there. So do they feel connected, or their teacher cares about them? So if you were a teacher in 5th grade, you will know what your students think about their connectedness to you, and you have some immediate feedback on what I can do about that. In addition to that, the school team also provides feedback on, do they really have the right supports in place? How do they feel about their competencies in terms of their skills or SEL, their emotional regulation? So we'll have some immediate feedback, and we have that now on what do we think we can do across our school to help make things better for our staff and students. So it's really important. I also want to kind of point out what it's not intended for. Is not intended for intervention. It's not intended to be the sole source for screening students, as it's their perspective on what they think they can do. And so that can be used in addition to other data sets to help us inform, maybe at Tier 2 and Tier 3, but it's not intended to be a screener for additional supports. All right, so Laura will talk a little bit about kind of our next phase and where we are with the planning.
So like we talked about, we do have the task force and the action team. And then we did meet last night with another group of community partners around SEL, and we'll be getting together with everyone on the 21st of November. So hopefully we'll have some more good discussion. In the meantime, one of the things that has come from our conversations with the youth that were involved in those first 2 meetings is the importance of elevating youth voice. And so we're in the process of setting up some focus groups so that we can target in just sort of more closely on some of those things that the students brought to us during that time of collaborative problem solving. So that is in the process right now. We're looking at about 15 sites and 3rd through 12th grade, and having facilitated focus groups so we can just get a little bit more information from students. The other thing that we'll be doing after CASEL comes in January is usually it's about a month or so, and then they will be providing us with a report of their findings. So we'll have our information from CASEL, we will have our information from Panorama, we will have our information from collaborative problem solving, as well as the youth voices from some focus groups, so that then all of those data points will help us be able to figure out what our plan needs to be and inform our steps moving forward. So that really ends up looking like, based on all that information, what is our professional learning for staff? Where is our readiness for implementation and resource guidance? This is a really big endeavor to take on. And so we want to be making sure that we're using all the data that we have and asking more questions if we're feeling stuck, and making sure that we feel confident that we're moving forward in the direction that makes sense based on the voices that we've heard from our community and our staff and our students. So those will be the next steps.
What questions do you have?
I I know I'm preaching to the choir when I say this, but, you know, the data has backed up for a number of years that the more connected our students feel to school, the better they perform in school. And so I do feel very strongly that we're doing the right work, that you guys, you know, that continuing this work is important for our students, and we'll see dividends in other areas through this. So thank you so much, for your dedication to the students and to our community. And Cindy and I actually had the opportunity last night to visit with some of the problem-solving folks, and I invited them all to come. I don't see any of them, or maybe I see one or two of them, but I think that this is very, very important to what we're doing. And I also had reassured them, from a board perspective, that we get our authority from the community, and that this was the number one priority that we saw at all of those listening sessions across all the buildings and everything, and that the board, regardless of who sits up here, this is what our community said the last time we came for feedback at this level. And so I think I just reassured them that this is the focus of the board, because this came from our community, and they're the ones that hold us accountable, and so this came from them. So from a board to staff perspective, I hope that that's also reassuring to hear that we recognize that as a board. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Kirsten. Ms. Langford.
This is really exciting work, and I recognize we're doing it, we're doing something new that hasn't necessarily been a focus for a lot of public educators. So we have to figure out what that system's going to look like for us. But I had a couple questions based on what you said. I was really excited to hear that you both consulted with teachers and youth. And so you mentioned that youth talked a lot about wanting their voices included. Were there any other major themes that came up when you talked with youth? And then what were staff feedback that you heard? What were some of their themes that came up?
The youth were very forthcoming with what they thought about.
I know they were. That's why I'm like, what they say, y'all. That feels like the truthful.
What they told us, and Laura can summarize as well, as she was at that table leading that group, is part of the reason that we need to do focus groups and get more feedback is one of the major issues around connectedness to school, but also like why do we have non-attachment to school, was that they feel like there isn't really a good system or a way for them to even communicate their thoughts, their ideas, what they want to advocate for within the school system. Mm-hmm. And so that even though there was a forum for us to do in that problem solving, that wasn't enough. And that we needed to hear more from them. And they even suggested to us that we can't facilitate the focus groups, that they need to. Because why would kids tell us things if in this, this broken system currently? Mm-hmm. Which was really, eye-opening for us and great for us to confirm help us kind of solve what those issues are.
And part of what was really interesting in listening to the group, and it was a diverse group, they were representation from all over town, and was that they were really reflective of who wasn't around the table. And I really appreciated that, and just their comments about, you're not going to get these kinds of kids in the, insert whatever these kinds of kids means if you don't come to the school. Like you can't expect young people to go to somewhere where adults are and then talk to adults. Like you really need to be at the school, talk to them in their own setting, maybe in a classroom with a teacher that they feel comfortable with. Like they had some really specific ideas about how we could engage students students whose voices maybe we don't always hear. Mm-hmm. And they did. They were really honest, I think, particularly talking about their experiences at the secondary level, about a lot of their interactions with adults tend to be about avoiding trouble. And that was really alarming to hear, actually, especially when we look at the research that tells us when you're connected to an adult, that's going to help with your learning and you're being connected to school. So we do need to do a little bit more digging.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to be cognizant of time. That's really good feedback to have. And then what about your staff? Because I think when we're talking about social emotional learning, we're talking about adult behavior. I mean, we're all humans, right? And we talk about a lot of the pressures that staff are feeling in the classroom already, and a lot of the real challenges that are happening in our buildings. What was their thought on this work that we're embarking on? And
We can get really diagnostic on Thursday about that. We'll know. We know what 90% of our staff think about their readiness for social emotional, what their own skills are, and how they feel about the supports within the school. So we can be able to provide a report to look at, and I think it's really important to kind of break that down in more, what does that mean? But in general, in the work session, I think similar to what you said, there's many things going on, and where does SEL fit within that? And how do we support that? What the groups kind of pointed out to us and helped remind us of, and I think was very apparent, which is, where our thinking lies as well, is that there is this hierarchy of needs, and where if we jump to SEL without establishing really healthy and safe students and safe staff that have connectedness to each other, it's really difficult for us to begin to talk about modeling and teaching skills around social emotional learning. And that was very aware of in those sessions with the community. I think the survey results will tell us what staff really think.
I'm sorry. So you're talking about, I thought you also did focus groups with staff. So you're looking at data from.
We haven't done focus groups with staff, just in the community forums. We've had 3 of those forums with the problem-solving forums with the staff.
Yeah. This will be the last time that, I'll be doing something like this. So I just want to say, I think being in buildings a little bit more, I've seen both the needs of our young people and our staff and where they conflict, and you're dealing with humans, right, who have a lot of stress on them. And I think it's very critical for any effort like this to be successful in our buildings, to really have the input and buy-in of our staff in this work. Because we're talking about emotions, we're talking about people, and adults have baggage that we bring with us every day into the classroom too. And so if your world behind the scenes isn't well, you bring that to this space, and just like our young people do. So I would just really encourage that work is laid out in a way that it's not just an additional thing, but something that folds into what teachers are already doing and they're bought in.
I hope you see that, and we're going slow so that we can do this the right way.
Yeah.
I think we could easily meet some of these board limitations by buying some resources for folks. We definitely think that's not the right way to do it. And that this full analysis and problem solving is the way to best inform a real plan that's going to be sustainable. And so we're really trying hard to get as much information as possible to really set out a plan that's going to be successful, but also reasonable, that we can accomplish.
Final thought with that, when I think about, oftentimes we use a lot of coded language to talk about social emotional behavior, and what I think we're often talking about is Black and brown children in a public school setting. And I think that when it comes to the extreme needs of our children, and it might be worth your time to touch base with your staff of color in the district and get their perspectives uniquely on what is impacting our young people in these buildings. And because I think they have a lot to share and a lot to give if they're given the space to do so. And they could be some of your biggest assets in this work.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
Ms. Caldwell-Johnson?
Perfect segue to my comment. There's so much about this work that is aligned with our equity work, and trying to make sure that the dots connect across all of those platforms will be, in my opinion, sort of the secret sauce where the rubber meets the road. So I'm hoping that in however we organize this work, and Jake, obviously you're doing a lot of the equity work along with Jomara and others as well, but I just want to make sure that we don't have these sort of competing demands that put us at odds with ourselves, when at the end of the day, all we're trying to do is serve our kids. So I don't know what that looks like, but I think it's really just more of a word of caution that we make sure that our systems are aligned and talking to one another, so that we're not at cross purposes at the end of the day. So that's my first thing. And then I think the other thing that's really important here is just this notion around resource allocation. And we know that we don't have a lot of extra money to put towards any of this. But boy, we've got a lot of resources embedded in this district that we can use to sort of unleash all of the things that we have to support the needs of our students. So again, ways that we begin to think about resource allocation as it sort of overlays this work, I think will be important to allowing the board to feel like even with our limited resources, there'll be success. Because it's not about new resources, it's about deployment of existing resources in a way that meets those needs. So really important, and this is like the end of the fiscal year, we're getting ready to go into budget, and so I often get worried when we're introducing a lot of new stuff, when we know that we don't have a whole lot to sacrifice because there's so much still to be done. So thank you for this work.
Thank you so much.
Just want to comment on the equity piece and just talk about the alignment quickly. Equity work starts with yourself. SEL work starts with yourself and what we need to do and how those work together in self-discovery and self-change. And so I think part of the reason that we want to get the staff information and the data from the assessment that we just had is we really don't know what skills our staff think they have. And one of the questions on there on the survey, which you'll be able to see, is around equity. There's a whole section around how they think they have the skills or not have the skills to work with students that are different than them or from different cultures than they are. And so I think that's going to be very informative to our work and on how we can plan professional development that is meaningful and then monitor whether or not it changes anything. So I think it's really important, and we totally see the alignment that you guys were talking about.
Include your staff of color. That's my last plea. Include them. They're your biggest assets.
Thanks. Mr. Barron?
Two things. One, building off of what Terry said, as you're introducing Castle and Panorama, the thought of resources did cross my mind. But I'm not necessarily going to push y'all on that one because we've said this is a priority, and we've given you the limitations through which to do it. So we trust you to stay within that. However, Terry, as always, made a very good point about bringing things alongside other things. And what I would add to that is, from my perspective as a board member, and others may share it, they may not, but I would hope that this district's not afraid to let some things supersede others or take the place of others, because we walk a fine line between initiative fatigue and you all have appropriately gotten the message that this is a very high priority of the board, 1 of 4, and so it's certainly getting the appropriate attention. But if that has to take the place of other things too, I, as a board member, would be supportive of that. And then the question I had, I just want to, this is more for clarification than anything else, but the work with Panorama, the 2 assessments that are happening this year, those are to set a baseline. So then it would be, it's safe for the board then to expect that by the time summer rolls around and we start getting into the next board governance year, that we will have then goals set for next year.
Yeah, we'll be in a position prior to the end of this fiscal year to have goals set for you guys to have the information that you need in collaboration with me and my team to set the SMART goal for SEL. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Anderson?
I think it sounds great. It's exciting. I echo kind of Deanna, just making sure that we're supporting our staff through this whole process too, because it'll be new and, something new, something more for them to do, which is what we should be doing. But maybe some of them feel a little overwhelmed as it is. So just making sure we're thinking about their needs as well. Thanks.
Okay, Ms. Deljadell?
Sorry, super quick. I think this just builds off of what they're saying. I think that this is just me as a reminder for my board colleagues and anyone that would join us at the board table here very shortly, that the more focused we stay on our work, the more focus it allows our staff, and I think it allows our teachers to know what's really important, because we do hear that from staff. When we meet with them, I'm gonna have coffee with them on Saturday, and I know some of what I will hear working in a school right after the month of October is, all of the competing responsibilities and how do we balance those. And so as a board member, I always remind myself that the more focused I can stay on the work that I'm doing, that the less whiplash and uncertainty that creates for all of our staff and our students. So.
And I would agree with that too, and which means the board has to be disciplined and stay on task and allow them to let things go as well. That's going to be the board's challenge. Yep. And opportunity. Exactly. Thank you. Thank you for this. I think probably what happens is that this report just goes on our consent next time as accepted and filed.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Jake.
The next item on our agenda is item F3, Board Quarterly Self-Evaluation for Student Outcomes Focused Governance. The report attached to the agenda is the collective self-evaluation process, which was led by our governance coach at our last October 15th board work session, where we were led through a process that included the superintendent to collectively complete the self-evaluation for our student outcomes focused governance, which again focuses us in on the priorities that we've set through our goals and limitation, and also tries to get us in a process of continuous improvement where we're stretching and trying to spend at least 50% of our meeting time on that focus. And this sets a baseline for that. And first, I guess I'll take a motion in a second to approve item F3.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and is there any discussion about this or anything anybody wants to highlight on that? Okay, we do have a motion in a second, so please vote. We have a motion passing 6-0 with one abstaining. And next item on our agenda is item F4, Governance Policy 1.2 Policy Revision. And this is a discussion item that I'll turn over to Rob Barron for context.
Sure. So this is a policy that I volunteered to draft. It would be in addition to Board Governance Policy 1.2. At the last meeting, we had the conversation about our board and administrative policies. The district had broken those out among those that are strictly the board's responsibility, those that are strictly administration's responsibility, and those for whom there's shared responsibility. And we have a nice little packet that breaks all of those out. And, in reflecting on that, that had been the first time in several years that we'd had any conversation about the policies, those particular policies in mass. So it seemed at the board table that folks were supportive of having some regular conversation of those, strictly to review them. And I think, what I tried to put into this, which would, compel us to do that, is both for the purpose of reviewing them, but also making sure that we're still compliant with them. Most of these are based in law, so, as duly elected members of this board, we're compelled to do these things, and so we should be aware of what we're supposed to be doing. So I just tried this. This is not at all, there's no pride in authorship on this, so you're more than welcome to comment on it. The one piece of context I'll give you is I set this at every 4 years, thinking that it should happen at least once every board term. It could happen more often than that. I'm not wedded to 4 versus any other number. And I also gave consideration to the timing. And though I didn't put it in here, I thought sometime in the summer would be appropriate to do this after an election, because with our elections timed right before we do board and superintendent evaluation and budget, it's a very busy time, basically for the first 6 months of that initial board term. And so then once we get into the summer, it tends to quiet down. That could be time for more thoughtful consideration. We don't have to put that in there, but that was one of the things I was thinking about as I was putting this together.
Thank you. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions or any modifications you would suggest?
Mild criticism.
Yep.
I've thought about this actually a lot and kind of went back and forth between 2 and 4 years because I think there's a lot of value in doing that. Like if you would happen to be someone who was elected and we're not going to do it for 2 years, I think there would be a lot of learning and value, you know, to doing that every 2 years. But you know, I go back and forth on that of, you know, then how valuable is that for folks, you know, that you know might do it 4, 6. But I mean, I don't know how often any of us get out the policy manual, right, and really sit down and look at it. So
I wondered if we might, I don't know if it needs to be in policy, but if we might break it down and do one segment 1 year and one segment another year, so that
do segments annually?
Yeah, do segments of it annually. It would make it a little bit more digestible, and then everyone would be.
That was sort of the way we used to do it. There was a frequency that came up that you were sort of on a rolling review. So while over the course of 4 years, everything would have been reviewed, you're doing them incrementally over that same period of time.
Yeah.
I feel like that's more digestible and potentially more retainable too, if you're not like drinking all of it through a fire hose at once.
Well, and you probably have greater fidelity to the process if you're doing it in little bits and pieces as opposed to the whole thing.
I like that.
So what I'm not sure of is that really even needs to change then in language, because if you're talking about every 4 years, it's then up to to further interpretation that a chunk of it happens so that every 4 years the full has been reviewed. So I think it's still fine that way.
Yeah.
Okay, so this can be on the next consent agenda as well. Thank you, everyone. Next on our agenda is item F5, Board Work Plan, which is work we've committed to do to fulfill our governance duties. And I'll turn it over to Kirsten, although I'm not sure that there's a lot to report with our new transition upcoming.
Yeah, part of me is like, we should put that on our task, you know, the implementation of our policy that will, I'm assuming, pass at next meeting, but we can also wait and do that, you know, next meeting. I don't know if the board has a huge preference because we're not going to act on it in the next 2 weeks probably. We'll need to get our new board seated and figure out what that would look like probably sometime in the spring, so.
Okay.
How about I just add it to the list for spring and just so that we don't forget about it?
Sure.
For maybe April? Okay. Did we have any updates on external monitoring? Nope, okay. Okay. Does anyone have anything else that we should be adding, thinking about, updating?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then on our agenda, we have information-only items, Head Start Policy Committee meeting minutes, preliminary plans for various school improvement projects for your review. And then it comes to items of privilege, and I have nothing to report at this time. Do any board members have comments or anything to mention?
Oh, yeah.
Postal 8, let's get Pepple passed. Okay, I will turn it over to Dr. Ahart for the superintendent's report.
Yes, polls don't close until 8. I can't suggest how you might vote, but if you're not informed on the Pepple initiative, inform yourself quickly and make it to the polls if you've not done so already. This is a crucial vote for a whole host of reasons. So we're hopeful that we'll get positive results tonight. Also want to preemptively welcome our staff and students back. We had kind of have a new calendar this year, which we're closing out the first fall break, some people are calling it, and we recognized Election Day as a day off for all staff and students, but our students have been off since last Thursday. It felt from my chair like a good time for everyone to take a breath and take a break, and I have heard from a number of building leaders that the break did come at a good time and is being used very productively by by staff and feeling like they're recharged with a really healthy understanding of the data that's been generated thus far in the year. We're about 25% through the school year. And so, so far, it seems like the calendar is working out in a pretty positive manner. Last thing, I would like to officially welcome Erin Jenkins to the board table. Thank you, Erin, for being here and for all the time that you've put in advance of this, your official first meeting. She's sort of been working in tandem with Sharon. And I would also like to give my most hearty thanks and gratitude to Sharon for filling in for 2 months.
2 months, yes.
Been a trooper and really doing 2 jobs at the same time. And we could not have made it through this stretch without you, Sharon. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And that's all I have.
Thank you. And with that, I will close the meeting.